So friends, for those of you who are out there on Zoom, welcome back for this afternoon session. And for those who are here on the in-house retreat, we want to continue our discussion of the Dhamma and the practice of meditation. So this morning we had mentioned about the essential aspect of meditation, or sort of one of the how do you pronounce that word? Etymology? Help me out, somebody. Anyway, grammatically speaking, like the term meditation, meaning keeping the mind in the middle. Because that's the root word of MEDI, meaning something being in the middle. And in terms of meditation, it's keeping the mind in the middle, which means the present moment, or avoiding the extremes. So everything in the world that we experience is basically divided into, the opposites, like black and white, night and day, good and bad, ugly, beautiful. And basically everything, that we experience is divided into these kind of polarities, and people struggle and get caught up and argue about these various ideas and differences, or, tall and short, fat and skinny. So, the mind is caught up in these comparisons. And actually, it's very interesting that, they call human beings mankind, or let's say they're womankind too, but man is more particular because it refers to the Sanskrit word or Pali word of mana. So the word man comes from mana, or mind comes from mana, and it's a measurement. So that means basically our mind, our conditioned mind, is a measuring device. It measures things. And one of the basic measurements is it measures me against others. Oh, I'm superior, I'm inferior, they're this, they're that, I'm this, I'm that. And we measure ourselves in terms of everything around us. I like these things, I don't like these things. So it's I don't know, maybe a Webster dictionary, the statistician will contradict me and say, oh, that's not where it came from. But anyway, it sounds interesting, right? So the word man, or humankind, sorry about that, comes from the word mana, M-A-N-A, to measure. And again, it's measuring things in terms of those dualities. So, and that is the nature of the existential problem, is that the mind is caught up in all of these types of measurings and comparisons, and especially in terms of pleasure and pain, in the things that it likes and dislikes. But all of this measuring, or the mind, is the conditioned mind, and this process of measuring is not its deepest true nature. And as I mentioned earlier, when the baby is born, its mind basically is kind of just in the present moment. It's not really measuring anything, with its mind's in the present moment. That means, the baby comes out and, sits on the mother's the stomach, and, its eyes are kind of wide open, and it's just kind of like, it's kind of, kind of empty in terms of a lot of thoughts and comparisons and identifications, and, doesn't even know who its mother is. All it knows is where it can get some milk, so it goes for that, and what brings it some comfort. But its mind hasn't started measuring and comparing and judging and getting attached to things other than just simply what brings it comfort. So the baby's mind basically is what we call, oceanic awareness. It doesn't have really many boundaries to it. Although it still feels some pain, if the doctor comes, spanks it on the rump, feels some pain, but this is just a kind of an instinctual reaction. And, hunger and wanting to find some milk. But later on, as the baby grows up, well, first of all, you give it a name, then people start giving it all kind of attention. All the relatives come over and want to hold it, and so on. And then, you give it a name, and you have to, after a while, you start calling its name, and it might start looking like before it wouldn't identify, oh, this is me, that's mine. It's mine is in this oceanic state, very expanded awareness without any boundaries. But gradually that closes up. And I've talked about this many times before, but it's very important to understand about the nature of the consciousness and the nature of suffering and how suffering has evolved as a mental state. So the baby grows up, or as the baby gets older, people start paying all this attention to it. And what used to be its mind for 9 months in the womb, and shortly after, basically the mind was fused together with the body. And all these billions of cells developing in the body, and each of the cell has, consciousness. And it was just, experiencing that tremendous growth of this multi-billion cell body. And when it came out, also the mind was still basically, connected to it. But then slowly it starts focusing outward. It learns language. Oh, there's the doggy, there's the kitty, that's mommy, that's daddy, this and that. And it starts to then identify, oh, these things are something outside of myself. And then grandmother comes by, gives the baby the first chocolate. You taste the chocolate and get a sweet taste. So maybe some pleasurable feeling comes to it. And then it starts to identify the face of the grandmother with a pleasurable feeling. And then it wants that pleasurable feeling again, so it's hoping that that face will come again, because it's connected with a pleasurable feeling. And then maybe the uncle or the grandfather squeezes the baby too tight and gives it some pain. And then the baby will associate that face with a painful feeling. And then it starts to divide things into what gives it pleasure and what gives it pain. And this is, according to so many things that are then being given to the child as it grows up and experiences. And it wants more of the things that bring it pleasure. And so it's start looking outside of ourselves, because everybody's giving the baby something. Oh, you have to have this, you have to have this, and giving it more and more things. And so it's drawn out of itself. The mind it loses that natural connection to the present moment and to the body and starts to focus outwardly. And with desires for what is going to bring it pleasure, and fears and worries and anxiety about what may bring it pain. I mentioned this morning too, how fundamentally the mind is caught between this tug of war between pleasure and pain. And these are the two main dualities, or the measuring. We measure things in terms of how much pleasure is this going to bring us, right? We can see it in advertising and everything else, and how much displeasure or pain is something going to bring. And we're always measuring it back in terms of myself. How is this, affecting myself? And so the mind is, this happens over many, many years, but it's, evolved that way, and we've lost that connection to the present moment and to the body. Because I mentioned before, the body is always in the present moment. And when the mind is in the present moment, there's nothing to measure or judge. But so basically the past and the future we've created those in our mind through that process that we just mentioned. And it's extrapolated out to basically, everything you've ever experienced in your life, and perhaps even going into past lives, and the memories have been carried over, is divided into things that we like and things that we don't like. And that almost every waking minute, right, of your life, or even in the dreams, the mind is caught up in that, what I call the pleasure-pain syndrome, or the tug of war between pleasure and pain. And we become dependent on pleasure to come from the outside, because again, we've been detached or disconnected from the natural pleasure of the present moment. And we become, lost that natural connection as we focus more and more into the future. And of course, that has to happen. A person couldn't stay in that state all the time. So, but the thing is, we've never been taught to, keep that connection to the body and present moment. It's something that, most people didn't feel it had any value, or they don't know nothing, even absolutely nothing even about it. So that's the problem. So we've grown up through all the years of growing up and getting more and more enmeshed in the web of the seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. And of course, greed and desires have been multiplied because our desire cannot be satisfied. It's kind of addictive. We need more and more pleasure to, feel comfortable with. And that's why people get addicted to these heavy types of drugs and so on, because they need more of that pleasure in order to avoid or mask over the pain that they're experiencing. So even pleasure and pain to a large extent are created in the mind, although they are sensations. But the way that we've relate to them from a personal point of view and develop that strong desire and aversion to it, that's what's got us involved in all the web of karma. Because we've lost that connection to the present moment happiness, contentment and happiness. And so we're totally reliant on that pleasure from the outside. That pleasure from the outside is not reliable because it's also based on many, many conditions. And they're constantly changing the conditions. And so we've gotten caught up in the, and if we don't have the means to satisfy our pleasure, then we go out and get involved in, unskillful ways of seeking our pleasure by hurting others, hurting ourselves, basically, like not following the basic moral guidelines of most society, infringing upon the rights of others, and just developing this strong kind of what the Buddha called greed, hatred, and delusion. So the accumulated greed, hatred, and delusion in the mind is basically the root of suffering. And actually, the Buddha defined suffering in three levels of suffering. There's the outer world of suffering, or the physical level, which means the suffering connected with this body. Subject to sickness and disease, all kind of pains, organ failures, and old age, and eventually death. So these realities of this physical body consume 50% or more of a person's life. And some people more or less with that. Some people are chronically plagued with sickness and body problems of much of their life, spending so much of their life even in hospitals and so on. And others may not have the physical problem, but they may have the mental suffering. But that's sort of the second level of suffering. So the first level of suffering the Buddha talked about is that just dealing with the survival of this body, having to go out and find food and keep on feeding it and taking care of it. And in the midst of that, you have to, associate and mingle and with others and do things and fight over this and that, fighting over resources in order to feed this body and so on. And then, of course, death, and everyone fears death. And why do they fear death? Well, because they're so attached to this earth that they don't want to leave it and all the desires or things they're familiar with, and the fear of the unknown. And especially if a person has led a life that they've done a lot of unskillful, negative karmic kind of actions, then they might fear the repercussions of that, depending on whatever their religious belief or so on. But anyway, so that physical level of suffering. Then there's the more mental level, which is not getting what you want and getting what you don't want. So a lot of that not getting what you want is, of course, connected with this body too, not getting what we want to satisfy this body, and getting what you don't want, the pains and sufferings that may come to the body. And not only to the body, though, but just in our life in general. So we all have things that we wish for, but they don't always come about. Like, you like to sit down in meditation and just be peaceful, but all of a sudden all kinds of pains come to your body or come into your mind, and you have a disturbed meditation. So that's, something you didn't want. You couldn't get what you wanted, a peaceful meditation. Or you got what you didn't want, a distracted meditation. And so on. That's just one example. But, this is occurring probably hundreds of thousands of times a day, this process of not getting what you want and getting what you don't want is occurring. we're not always physically sick. So not every day we might be physically suffering overtly in some way, but mentally, this not getting what one wants, getting what one doesn't want, is occurring, so many times per day, but on so many subtle levels too, from gross levels to very subtle ones. Like, you ever thought about it? Blinking. Blinking is a good example. How many people blink? Right, everyone blinks, right? You ever thought about why do you blink? Why?
It's a reflex because the eye is a protective reflex to keep the eye moist.
Right, well, there's some kind of irritation in the eye, right? You have some scratchy feeling in the eye or whatever. So basically, we don't like that. I mean, you can force yourself not to blink, or you can blink. If you see that urge to blink, you can kind of relax around it. You can delay the blinking, or you can just blink. On one hand, it is a habit, but on the other hand, the habits are also motivated from a deeper level of the unconscious mind, the self-preservation, and I don't like that because it's an irritating feeling, and so you want to get rid of it. You blink, or so many of the other types of things. You lift up to rub this, or scratch this. All those things you're trying to get rid of what you don't want, meaning an unpleasurable feeling. Now, every time you do that, it may seem very innocent. So, well, big deal. So what? So I, scratch my nose. Okay. But the thing is, it's the aversion. It's strengthening the I don't like it that's deep within the mind, strengthening the ego, and that I want to get rid of it. Because most people have a very low pain threshold tolerance. And it's mainly a learned response. You see other people do it, and you think, oh, I guess I have to scratch my head too, or something. But all these little body irritations, they're really nothing much, And if you just were able to pause and, observe it, like just, itching. Okay. Well, check it out. It's just an itch. Okay, it's not going to kill me. And you realize, you can watch it for 10, 15 seconds. You're not dead yet. And while you're observing it, it vanishes by itself. And then you don't have to reach up and scratch it because it's going to vanish by itself anyway. So this is an aspect about impermanence. But it's a very important one to understand, and they're all connected. But basically, every time you react to something with aversion, I don't like it, I want to get rid of it, you strengthen that idea in your mind. That's called a sankhara. You strengthen that habit of aversion in the mind, and you strengthen the sense of self or I. I won, I got rid of that. Or the opposite, every time you feed a desire, you also strengthen the habit of the desire. And in turn, also the ego. I got it. I won. Every time you defeat somebody else in whatever it was, a game or whatever, it strengthens the sense of I. So both the pleasurable feeling and the painful feeling, the reactions to those are, almost all of our karma is created through that process, and it all strengthens the sense of self and I as being somebody different from the rest of the world, and then measuring ourself against the rest of the world and the things, and the objects of the world. And the whole life is spent on, in that pursuit. And most people, just take it for granted. that's the way it is, and they suffer from it. But they just say, well, nothing can be done about it, or they get angry at others when their desires are not fulfilled. And they're always trying to, point blame at others for the source of their problems, where in essence, according to the Dhamma, on the deepest level of the Dhamma understanding, the source of suffering is actually that ignorance of the mind and not understanding what this mind is. Because the mind has been given kind of short shrift in sort of science. And most of science is bent on trying to improve our material existence or make it more comfortable, or exploit the resources of the world that can make our lives more comfortable or luxurious, or to satisfy our increasing desires, the need to have things quicker and faster. So we have to mine the earth for all these precious metals that allow to have supercomputers and all these other things, and to do things faster and faster. And you all know what that also, and these countries are exploited for their minerals, and the suffering just proliferates. But it all comes back to the insatiable need for this greed. Most people understand that on a kind of a vague theoretical understanding, but they say, well, other countries and other people should do something about it first, rather than seeing that they're also adding their 2 cents worth to that whole kind of pot. But the main takeaway of that is that the deepest level of suffering is within our mind. And basically it comes back to the sense of the self and how it's caught up in this pleasure-pain syndrome, and how we're caught up in this idea of the past and the future, and allowing these ideas of the past and future to create suffering in our mind. Because, people are worrying what they did with the past, and they're worrying about it, or they're creating desire for more things in the future, what they remember from the past. And they want more of that in the future, or they remember the past and they don't want more of that in the future. And basically the whole mind has been tied into knots. And with most people, don't succeed in unraveling it. And actually the Buddha talked about that. There was somebody who came to the Buddha and he said, Master Gautama, this world is entangled in a tangle. Or he said, the inner tangle and the outer tangle. This world is entangled in a tangle. I asked thee, Master Gautama, who succeeds in disentangling this tangle? And that's when the Buddha then taught him the Dhamma. Who succeeds in disentangling the tangle is one who develops morality, concentration, and wisdom, or sila, samadhi, and panya. I may talk about more later, but still, the basic practice of the Dhamma. In the outer tangle, of course, is the world of the sensual stimulations: sight, sound, smells, tastes, touch, feelings, and so on, and the memories. And then the inner tangle is the memories of those, and all the desires and planning and scheming and worry, fear, anxiety connected with those. So the outer tangle of the actual physical world of things, but then there's an inner tangle of the mind. And again, That's why meditation is putting the mind in between those two, as I mentioned this morning, keeping the mind in the middle, not going out into the outer tangle and not going into the inner tangle, but finding that middle path. In the middle path also is the path of the present moment. And that's why, the meditation practice begins with learning how to, first understanding that from a theoretical point of view, but then understanding that it's actually a possibility for learning how to rest our consciousness in the present moment, where the mind isn't measuring and judging things so much. And again, our only access to the present moment is this physical body, because our mind is nothing but past and future, most of it, the conditioned mind. But the deeper underlying nature of consciousness is present moment awareness that the baby had, but they lost it. And no one's ever taught us how to regain it until somebody like the Buddha or somebody else comes along. Where people have talked about it, but they never actually showed or taught us how to actually reconnect with it. I mean, people have from time to time, but most people, they're so much caught up in the world that they don't pay any heed to it. I mean, look, go stand out in front of Walmart or Home Depot and ask somebody, does your mind ever rest in the present moment? Well, hell no, I got so many things to do. So anyway, that's why most people cannot understand what suffering is. A lot of times we give talks about suffering, right? The Four Noble Truths is the Buddha mentioned suffering 4 times, right? Four Noble Truths: suffering, cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So that's all people hear: suffering, 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 suffering. I don't want to hear about this suffering. Give me happiness. Give me happiness. Now, the reason why the Buddha didn't talk directly about happiness, I mean, he did indirectly, but you have to infer that the end of suffering is happiness, but people don't even want to hear about the suffering. They just want to do things to be happy. So most people are doing things to be happy and don't understand that actual, real, deep, pure happiness is actually the non-doing, the mind that's resting in non-doing, the mind that's resting in the present moment and just enjoying the deep contentment and unity. Because unhappiness is for the ego. Suffering is only for somebody who suffers. If there's no one to suffer, then there's no suffering. And suffering is basically for the ego, the self. And that's one of the deepest aspects of the Buddha's teaching. One of the deepest aspect of the Buddha Dhamma is about anatta, right? That essentially the feeling of a separate I or me within our consciousness is an illusion that's been created, since birth, as I mentioned. Of course, the seeds of ignorance have been carried over even from the past lives, but that's another issue. But basically, we've allowed that process to occur and grow in our mind because everyone else is doing it, right? And we grow up seeing everybody getting angry at everybody else, everybody having greed, and we think, oh, that's what I got to do too. If we don't do it, then we're seen as somebody, wow, that person is weird, So, inadvertently, we've been sucked into that condition. And again, most people don't know how to get out of it. But that's where the practice of the Dhamma comes. And that was the wonderful thing about the teachings of the Dhamma, and especially the Buddhist teachings, because they're very straightforward and very clear. And he actually gave us the techniques, not just talk about it. A lot of people give lip service about, the ultimate truths or whatever, but they don't actually give you some step-by-step methods or instruction about how to actually do that. Now, how many people have tried to untangle a ball of string? How many people had a cat at home and they had a ball of string and then the cat was knocking the thing all over the house and it was all tied in a million knots? And you had to try to untie it, right? And it took you a lot of different things to untie those knots. Well, the same way, we've tied our mind into all these knots of interconnected desires and self and I and aversion and so on. And it takes a very clever person and with a lot of patience to untie the knots. So the Buddha's, the path of untying the knots is, in the Dhamma, the practice of meditation. Of course, there are other aspects to it as well, but the practice of meditation, that means, again, keeping the mind in the middle. That means the present moment by using an object of concentration in the beginning. Because our mind is normally always just moving between past and future. So we have to get it something that it can kind of anchor to. And so the breathing and the body, again, as I mentioned, it's the only thing that we have available to us instantly, because it's right there beneath your nose. The breath is, touching the nostrils as it goes in and out, or the chest is expanding and contracting. So, that's the starting point. Now, the Buddha taught meditation in the four foundations of mindfulness. And the four foundations of mindfulness is the gradual process to be able to reach the inner mind, or to reach our consciousness. Because our mind and body is a layers, like 5 different layers that we have to go through to reach the subtlest level of the present moment awareness. And in the Dhamma, it's called the 5 aggregates, or the 5 sheaths. And meditation is basically an obstacle course. I'm trying to guide the awareness through this obstacle course of the material vibrations and the obstacles of the pleasurable and painful feelings, and the obstacles of our perceptions and memory, and then the obstacle of our ingrained habits in our thoughts and emotions that are triggered off by those previous 3, by material vibrations, feelings, and perceptions, trigger off our thoughts and trigger off our body to do all kinds of things. And then finally, the consciousness itself. Now, this may sound a little complicated, but in the process of meditation, that's what you're dealing with. All of the hindrances that you may experience is because we're bumping into these levels of body-mind experience that we we don't know how to deal with, and they keep our mind limited and keep it in a very narrow confine, and just trapped in the basic cyclic process of just repeating our various types of habits. And so, we rarely, are able to penetrate through all those levels to the deepest level of awareness, of the present moment awareness. So that's why in mindfulness meditation, especially also in vipassana meditation, actually the word, I think I mentioned already, but mindfulness meditation and vipassana meditation and insight meditation, these are the three kind of words, English words, that are normally associated with the Buddhist meditation. But it starts with mindfulness, and we all already mentioned that. But mindfulness simply means the alertness, and being alert to what is occurring in the present moment in your body and mind. So you start by the alertness to the breathing in the body, which is that connection to the present moment, and to develop the concentration. As we mentioned already, the things that block our ability to gain concentration are, talked about it this morning, right? Sleepiness, well, keep it simple. Sleepiness, pain, and monkey mind. I mean, it's incessant thoughts. Now, greed, hatred, restlessness, those are all lumped into monkey mind. That means just so many kinds of thoughts: worry, fear, anxiety, greed, hatred, judgments, comparisons, all that our mind gets caught up into. So anyway, those are what block us. And so, and those are connected with these stages of the meditation practice. So first we learn to use the body and breathing as that initial concentration device, and the mindfulness. A lot of people see mindfulness and concentration as two different things. They can be, but they really shouldn't be. They're kind of like two sides of a coin. But mindfulness is a state of alertness, knowing what's going on. But first of all, we may put it onto an object like our breathing, because it's something that's readily available. It doesn't take rocket science to really feel it too much. So, and concentration is simply the unbroken mindfulness. We try to be mindful, but it gets broken by the hindrances and interrupted, so that the mindfulness doesn't become continuous. But unbroken mindfulness is concentration. So really, even concentration is simply mindfulness that's unbroken. That's not moving around from object to object. That's the way I like to define it. Of course, there's other ways you might be able to define it, but in terms of the basic practice, especially the practice of mindfulness, that's why mindfulness comes first. In all the teachings of the Dhamma, like even the Eightfold Path, right mindfulness comes before right concentration. And in the spiritual faculties, mindfulness comes before concentration. In the 7 factors of enlightenment, mindfulness is listed first, and concentration is listed sixth. So that's why first we become mindful, like of the posture, because the posture is the present moment, that connection to the present moment, and then the breathing that's going on within the posture, in the various sensations. And while we're feeling more and more of the body, we come in direct contact with the pleasant and painful feelings, because you'll be starting to feel an itch there, and you can see how the mind doesn't like that itch. So it, there's an urge to want to scratch to get rid of it. Well, there's a pain over here somewhere else, and see that urge to want to move to get away from the pain. So you can directly see that level of, that's the second aggregate of feelings, the painful and pleasant feelings. And in the beginning, painful feelings might be more than the pleasant feelings. But once you've developed meditation a little more, pleasant feelings will start outweighing the painful feelings, because you've learned and trained yourself how to kind of neutralize the negative reaction to pain, or to be able to extend your pain threshold. Like training with itches and minor pains is one of the most powerful aspects of the meditation practice in the beginning. And when you feel that pain coming on, just to observe it. You see that initial urge, but then you kind of talk yourself through it. Well, that pain's maybe not that bad. And if I move, then I reinforce the idea that I don't like it. And I reinforce the ego. But if I just relax around it, you'll see that, I can tolerate, it's not that bad. It's doable. And you can write it out you'll be surprised how long, if you can just observe it and create a kind of a observing distance to it. In the various, there's so many different types of body irritations and pains that can be felt going on in the body, even in the space of just a few seconds. How many people were able to notice that sometime in their meditation? How many could feel like even multiple different irritations or itches or stinging sensations or pains going on at the same time? Did anybody enjoy it? No, most people wouldn't. But actually, you can learn how to actually enjoy it by learning how to relax around it and see, these things can't kill me. And you don't have to waste your energy flailing around and, doing all that. And that's how we waste our energy, is by reacting to things that don't really need to be reacted to. It's simply because we've never been trained, and we become too soft and always wanting everything perfect, or very low pain tolerance. So instead, you can learn how to increase that tolerance by relaxing around it. First of all, you can feel where the body's tensing up. You just observe those muscles, and you can relax, and even tell your mind to relax. And then the wonderful thing about it is it's impermanent, because we feel a pain and we assume that it's going to last forever. And so that's frightening. I have to get rid of it. But the knowledge of impermanence helps you say, wait 5 seconds, wait 6 seconds, 7 seconds, wait 15 minutes. No, you gradually, little by little, you increase the ability to endure pain before giving in to try to remove it. So pain is one of the most important aspects of meditation training, because it affects so much of our life. And most of the pains that we experience are not life-threatening, and are not going to really cripple you or harm you in any big way. Now, there are certain ones, maybe, but those are a minimal one. So we train ourselves by, actually encouraging and just being aware and seeing all those moments of when the mind is that first tightening of aversion arises, and see how they just arise, last a few moments, minutes, and vanish. And even if there's pleasurable feelings, knowing that those also don't last, you can enjoy them while they're there, but when they vanish, not to have that craving to get it again. So if those pleasurable feelings come, there's no harm to, they're there, okay, yeah, they're nice. But knowing that they're also going to vanish and not last. And that you'll see that the underlying present moment awareness is even more happy than the fleeting objects, the bubbles of pleasure and pain that are arising. They're simply arising through this deeper, subtler level of present moment mental space, or present moment awareness. And that's even more sublime than these cheap thrills of, pleasurable feeling that might arise, now and again in the meditation. But it's that underlying state of just present moment awareness, which is actually the permanent state. The deathless state. But anyway, so that's why the connection to the body is a stepping stone for directly confronting the pleasurable and painful feelings that are coming up. Because normally we don't see them when they first come up. They come up and they've already taken over our mind before we realize that we're struggling against them. So that's why the physical body is a stepping stone for reaching the feelings, and the feelings are part of the mind. Because we've given things their objectivity of being, I don't like this, or I like this, or this gives me pleasurable feeling, this gives me painful feeling. And the mind basically recreates those ideas each time. And that you think that feeling is some kind of a permanent thing, which actually it's just it's being created within the consciousness through the ego's identification to it. This is very important. This is a part of wisdom. And it can't be seen by an intellectual kind of thing. It can only be seen in the meditation. And the understanding of impermanence is that they will change. Just give it a few seconds, a little bit longer. Our thoughts and emotions will change. Our various other feelings and various disturbances, they're all going to change if we just have patience and can rest and stay grounded in the present moment. And that we see that we don't have to waste so much mental energy or even physical energy trying to struggle or get away from these things, because they were caused by conditions. And they arise, last a few moments, and most of them just will vanish. And that is how you disentangle the tangle. The tangle arises when the pain arises and you want to fight it, or you struggle to push it away, or that pleasurable feeling, you struggle to want to hold on to it. And so you strengthen that tangle of the mind into that particular object. But when you give it the space of awareness, when you're connected to the present moment, and part of your mind is connected to that awareness of just the subtle vibration of sitting and breathing, But on the surface, these other types of aches and pains and itches and scratches or emotions, they're all happening more up above that. And so, but usually our attention is not connected to that. That's why we get sunk and pulled down, by these emotions and struggles, because we haven't contacted that deeper, stable level of present moment awareness that's always there as the deepest underlying vibration of the consciousness. And that's why creating this connection, first of all, the first stage of meditation is learning how to connect to that and understand that, yeah, that's there, that's something that's real. And then using that in contrast to once you get connected to that, even though the surface things, the aggregates of feeling, perception, volition, and other thoughts are happening, because you have that anchor, it doesn't sink the ship. Right? If a ship is out in the sea or in the harbor and a storm comes up, hurricane, doesn't have an anchor, then it gets blown up on the rocks or capsizes. But if the ship has a good anchor that's deep in the bottom of the ocean, the ship might move around a bit, but it's not going to crash into other ships or capsize because of that anchor. So the same way is occurring within our body-mind process in terms of the meditation. We've got to establish that anchor, and that anchor is concentration. The ability to stay connected to some sensation of body or breathing, doesn't really matter which one, but some just purely physical vibration, a subtler vibration, then that will help us to remain calm in the midst of whatever mental activity and other hindrances are trying to come up. We retain some connection to the present moment awareness, and not feeding our reaction to whatever is occurring in the body-mind process. So we're just kind of in a brief nutshell, that is kind of what we're trying to do in the practice of the mindfulness and meditation. So I mentioned the five aggregates. So you got the physical body. First, you get grounded in the physical body. That gives you a front row seat to these various pleasurable and painful irritations, sensations that are triggering off our anxiety, worry, fear, greed, hatred, and the thoughts. So we don't see the thoughts coming because we didn't see the sensations that are triggering off the thoughts. And so once you've gotten to the level of the feelings, that's where the thoughts are being triggered off. So if you can actually see the feeling arise, you can see the thought starting to arise, and you can cut it off, or you can nip it in the bud before it has overtaken you and carried you off into the past and the future and the whole inner tangle. And so this is the process that's involved in the meditation, very methodical type of process that the Buddha, developed. And then the thoughts lead to our reactions about the thoughts. So you could be thinking, should I move? Should I not move? You could be thinking about that, right? Then at some point, you got to make a decision. And then you make the decision to move or not to move. And if you move, you strengthen that sankhara of aversion and strengthening the idea of I don't like it. And if you decide not to move, you actually get very happy because you said, oh, I actually did that. I actually could endure that, Before you might never even have thought about it, But once you actually see that, wow, you can actually endure that pain. You forgot all about it for a few minutes, It brings happiness, actually. And then once you are able to get through that obstacle course of the physical body, also the world, the sensations, the sounds coming through your ears, sounds, smells, tastes, sights, to the level of feeling, then you go through that barrier, and then the perceptions and thoughts, and then the consciousness. So the last thing you arrive at is just that level of awareness. You made it through that obstacle course. So that's the way we have to try to see the practice of meditation. And also that meditation is like a scientist. You have to have the attitude that you're a scientist. So when you come in to meditate, you should have the idea that you're going into the laboratory. And you sit down, and this body is a laboratory for the meditator. Lab 101, right? So, and then the microscope is focused attention, concentrated attention. So then you aim that microscope down to whatever you want to look at, you can look at it. Normally we don't know hardly anybody has that kind of a power because they never tried it, for one thing. But when you actually try it, you see, well, I can actually do that. So you can focus your attention on your foot or your hand or your body or any part of the body, or breathing. And the longer you keep your attention there, it's like turning up the power of the microscope. And you see more and more details of it. That's the concentration. Is the longer you can hold your attention on a particular object without being distracted, it turns up the power of the microscope that you see more and more subtler details of it. The problem is most people can't hold the mind long enough without it being interfered with by the hindrances. So that's why the mindfulness of the hindrances is important in the beginning. So I think I've gone on long enough, and that there's more that can be said about it. So, but if any questions about any of this has come up in your mind, or as we meditate, then you can write them down in the evening tea break later tonight, or something like that. You can write the question down on the slips of paper, and that's down in the tea room. And if you're going to write the question, try to write clearly or print clearly so I can easily read, and try to keep it kind of short and to the point. No books, please. Or multiple page kind of long rambling questions. So, okay. So I think that might be all for now. Okay, so now because you've been sitting for about an hour, slowly, mindfully kind of stand up and do a short standing meditation, and before we sit down again. For those of you who are out there and on Zoom, then you can also take maybe 5 minutes or so and do some standing or walking or stretching where you are. It might be about 10 minutes before we start our sitting meditation again. So if you need to use the restroom during this time, do that also. Stand straight. Feel the body, standing body, feel the feet pressing the floor. Feel the straight legs over the feet. Feel the arms and hands hanging at the side. Feel the clothing touching the skin on different places. Feel the head balanced on top of the neck. If you're wearing a mask, feel the sensation of the mask against the face. And just be aware of standing. Feeling a different sensation. Take a few, just begin some deep, slow breathing. If you're wearing a mask, you might want to lift up part of it so you can breathe easier. Hold the air in the lungs for a few seconds. You feel that subtle exhilaration of the oxygenating blood. Just feel that pause in the expanded chest and the out breath. Just cultivating this basic awareness. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Just finding the door of the laboratory. We're going to do a few simple stretches, generate more body sensation, more activated life force, help you keep grounded in the body. And coordinate these movements with the breathing. Doing the movement on the in-breath, holding the position for 3 seconds or so, returning to the starting point to the opposite direction on the out-breath. Pausing a moment and then repeating it 2 more times. You can open the eyes if you want. I haven't seen these before, so I'll lead you through it. So on the next in-breath, raise the arms over the head, interlock the fingers, turn the palms up, straighten the arms, stretch your head back, bend back a little bit, stretch. Out breath, turn the palms down, touch the top of the head. In breath, palms up, straighten the arms. Out. The third time, hold that upward stretch longer. Bend back a little bit. Feel the sensation. Release the fingers, the out breath, arms back to the sides. Feel the sensation. Relax. Let that increased body sensations hold your mind there in the present moment, feeling this pleasant sensation, the life force. Remember standing. With the next in breath, push up on the toes, raise the arms over the head in this way and stretch up, facing the hands toward each other. Out breath, back down. Use the breathing to help lift and lower the body. The in breath, blowing up a helium balloon, the body rises up. Out. In. Stretch. Relax. Gradually opening the door of the laboratory, of the body, going inside, feeling the subtle life force vibration, subtle pulsation. Next, we'll do side bending using one arm at a time. So on the in breath, raise your left arm up. And keep the fingers and arms straight, close to your hip. On the out breath, bend over the right side as far as you comfortably can. In breath, lift up. And keep the arms and fingers straight. Same side 2 more times, out breath. And stretch inside. In. Out. In. And the out breath, lower that arm. Next in breath, the other arm. 3 times to the other side, out breath. Try to coordinate the movement with the breathing, try to regulate the breath so it's slower. Don't let it out so fast. In breath up. Out. In. Out. In. And out breath. Lower down. Relax. Just keep feeling the body. especially in the hands and fingers, subtle pulsation, light kind of vibration. Present moment awareness. You just do the head turning again on the in-breath. Try not to turn your shoulders or torso. Try to pivot the head on the neck vertebrae, well-oiled ball bearing. On the in-breath, turn the head to the right. You have a stiff neck, just be careful. Look over your right shoulder. Turn your eyes to the right more. Look at something behind. In the in-breath, turn the head 180 degrees back to the left. Look over the left shoulder. In-breath back to the right. Out-breath left. In-breath. Out. The next in-breath, let the head stop in the center. Just feel the whole body. Try to get a sense of that organic aliveness under the skin, the activated cells interacting, electrical energy circulating. Present moment awareness. Underneath all the mental chatter, the subtle vibrations, the now. Okay, now go ahead and sit back down. For those out there in Zoom land, We're going to be, sorry to keep you waiting. Start the meditation now. Just try to get comfortable in the body. So just feeling the external body being the laboratory, coming to the door of the laboratory, feeling the outline of the sitting body, buttocks and feet pressing the floor, the hands touching together, clothes touching the skin, the head balanced on top. It's the door of the laboratory, the external body. And gradually going underneath the skin to pick up on the subtler sensations. Doing the yoga exercise, it should still be with you. Rest the attention behind the eyes, just sort of the microscope lens. Not the fleshy eye, but the eye of awareness. Just feeling those vibrations of the eye. Feeling other sensations in the face. Prickling sensations. Sensations from the forehead, the nose, cheeks, lips, chin. Just looking through the microscope of focused awareness, concentrated awareness. Just turn on the video camera of concentrated awareness. Just feel all those sensations. And gradually panning down to the body to feel the rest of the body, feel the shoulders, the arms. Chest and stomach, clothing touching the skin. And coming down where the buttocks press the seat. You feel the right buttock and the left buttock sensation. Taking an inner video of moving down through the legs, down the upper legs, toward the knees, feeling the sensations of the clothing on the external skin, anything from inside the muscle tissue. Going over the knees, down into the lower leg. You come to the heels, and just pause and focus on the heels of the feet. That subtle pulsation, the circulation of blood ends in the feet. Has to turn around and go back. So you feel the strongest pulsations in the toes. If you can notice the outline of different toes where they touch together. Feel that aliveness in the feet. And then kind of reverse the direction and start going back from the toes, back up toward the heel, and up through the legs and to the top of the head. Just take a few minutes. It's like you were taking a video. You all take videos outside. You take a video with the world's best video camera, consciousness. Directed consciousness. Just feeling anything on the surface of the skin or underneath the skin. Like the mind was on a slow rising elevator, slowly, steadily rising upward to the body. Just feeling all those changing sensations. Some sensations may be a little painful, others may be pleasant. So many different types of sensation. Once you come back up to the top of the head, and just try to feel the outline of the whole body. Tuning into the breathing process in the middle of the body. The sensations of expanding and contracting, the in and out breathing, sort of the main concentration point in the middle. But in the peripheral vision, you can feel kind of the outline of the larger body. It's cultivating that present moment awareness in sitting, out, out, sitting. And those pauses between the in and out breath, feeling the subtle vibration, the whole body. It's called feeling the body in the body, feeling the breathing body within the larger body. It's called mindfulness of the body. Concentration holds the attention on the breathing outline of the body. Alert mindfulness is alert for different sensations coming and going, any pains or hindrances, trying to pull your mind away. With each breath, it's like turning up the power of the microscope a little more. Feel subtler vibrations. You see how quickly certain sensations arise and vanish. They arise, last 1 or 2 seconds and vanish. Each pulse arises and vanishes. The in-breath arises and vanishes. Starts, lasts a couple seconds, stop. The out-breath starts, lasts a couple seconds, stop. It's called arising and vanishing. First stage of insight. Same time, thoughts or ideas might be arising and vanishing in the back of the mind without being carried away by them. Just try to see the thoughts like the boring news announcements that go across the top of your computer screen. Keeping focused in the breathing body. The mind loses its energy, or it's drowsy. Go back and take some deep, slow breaths. Reactivate the awareness. Get re-grounded, re-centered in the breathing body. Check or straighten the posture. Start to notice more and more sensations arising and vanishing, or subtle thoughts arising and vanishing to the back of the mind, urging. Desires, aversions, it's all broken records of habitual thoughts. And right there, up beneath all those stream of thoughts, is the ever-present awareness. Sitting and breathing, anchor to the present moment. The mind is calm and focused enough. See if you can kind of just identify those 5 aggregates. Just the purely physical vibration, and any pleasant or painful neutral attributes of those vibrations, and the recognition or memory of whatever body parts or other objects pop into the mind, perception, mental pictures created through vibration and memory, which then triggers off thoughts or emotions about the 4th aggregate of sankhara, habit pattern, thoughts, emotion. And then the consciousness itself with a sense of I or me or mine. I'm meditating ego consciousness. I want this or I don't want that. All those 5 aggregates are just continually arising and vanishing, changing every second. That's the vipassana awareness. Seeing the mind as it really is, its flow of impermanence. And that sound vibration arises, triggers off perception, thoughts vanishing. Now, if you're sitting well, concentrated, you can continue to sit longer if you like. Otherwise, for the next hour, it's going to be a period of kind of your own practice. So you can, when you're ready, slowly stand up and do some standing. And I recommend if you go outside and do some walking out in the fresh air. Might be cool, but some walking outside in the fresh air is good. In nature, alternate walking and standing, listening to the vibration. And then about a quarter to about an hour or so, we're going to start the afternoon yoga class. So come back for that. For those listening in on Zoom, we're going to close down the broadcast now. So see you tomorrow morning at 8:45, if you like.